Hello guys, and welcome to the channel The Movie Guy. Today I'll be going to explain you a Spanish thriller drama movie called The Skin I Live In. The movie starts with Robert Ledgard, where we see he is informing the scientists about his new medical invention, which was the artificial skin. It will be life-changing for the burn victims. It was also resistant to mosquito bites, and also you cannot differentiate it from a normal human skin. He calls the experiment Gal. He was highly appreciated for his work, and all these work was done from his home. After the conference, the president of the company asked about the material used to make these artificial skin. In replies, Robert says he uses animal blood. The president was still dubious of the experiments, so asked if he ever did this experiment on a human. He discloses he has also conducted illegal transgenic experiments on human. On hearing that the president is mad at him, he should have thought of the consequences if his experiment would have failed. He had committed a blunder, so the president tells him to stop the research, and Robert agrees to discontinue with the research. Robert then returns home. In his house we see he is keeping a young woman named Vera captive, with the help of one of his servants, Marisa. Marisa was like a mother to him. She had taken care of from the childhood. We also see Robert had installed CCTV camera everywhere in the house to keep an eye on Vera. Due to the suspension of his official experiments, Robert asks Marisa to dismiss the other servants. On the other hand, we see Vera was exhausted from her life, and also Robert experiments upon her. She attempted suicide many times by trying to cut her veins, but because of the artificial thick skin, there would be no wounds on her skin, and it is also revealed Robert was a plastic surgeon and he had transformed Vera's face to resemble his late wife's face. Scene shifts. While Robert is out, Marisa's son, after committing a robbery, arrives outside Robert's house to hide. He tells his mother Marisa to open the door, but his mother, known to his behavior, doesn't want to let him in, but after telling him that he misses her, she finally opens the door and let him in. He starts eating everything from the refrigerator. While eating, he sees Vera on the security camera. He thinks it was Robert's wife, and gets confused. He then asks his mother to hide him for a few days. Marisa refuses to let him stay, so he binds and gags her. He then enters Vera's room, and starts torturing and assaulting her. Suddenly Robert arrives and sees Vera getting assaulted by Zeka, so he shoots Zeka. He then asks Vera if she is alright. Later, while Robert disposes of Zeka's body, Marisa tells Vera that she is the mother of both Zeka and Robert by different men, a fact that both Robert and Zeka were unaware of. They were stepbrothers. Robert was adopted by Marisa's employers but was ultimately raised by her. Zeka later left to live in the streets and smuggle drugs, while Robert went to medical school and married a woman named Gal. One day Zeka goes to Robert's house to meet his mother. There she finds Robert's wife. He was jealous that Robert found a beautiful woman to marry. When Zeka came back years later, he and Gal ran off together. They were involved in a terrible car crash in which Gal was badly burnt. While Zeka leaves assuming that Gal must be dead, Robert found Gal and takes care of her. Robert tells his wife that he helped her recover. Her whole body was burned. She used to spend her time in grief. There were no mirrors in her room, because she might be afraid after seeing her burned body. Scene shift and we see the couple also had a daughter, Norma. She was completely unaware of what had happened to her mother. Robert and Marisa told her that she had gone somewhere for her job. One day, while hearing her daughter Norma singing, she goes to look her, but Gal accidentally sees her own reflection in the window, which leaves her in shock. She begins to scream and then jumps from the window and commits suicide in front of her daughter. Seeing her die in front of her leaves Norma traumatized. Norma is sent to psychiatric hospital for recovery. In the present, Robert returns and spends the night with Vera. He also apologizes to Vera for all the things he did to Vera. Vera forgives him. Later they spend the night together. During the night, Robert dreams of his past. Robert loved her daughter, so he did not want her daughter to spend her whole life in the psychiatrist hospital. In the dreams we see Robert has took her daughter to a wedding. Norma finds a boy named Vincent there. He takes her to a garden. He then sexually assaults her. Hearing her daughter screams, Robert comes to find her. He finds Vincent leaving in the motorbike. He finds Norma, his daughter, unconscious on the ground. He takes her to the hospital, where the doctors tells that she had come to believe that Robert had sexually assaulted her upon awakening with him above her. She now fears men and is suffering from androphobia. She eventually kills herself by jumping from the window. Scene shifts and now see Vera's dream. Vicente, a young man who works in his mother's dress shop, crashes the wedding and meets Norma. Like others at the party, he is under the influence of drugs. He and Norma go to the garden. Norma lists her medicine that she is taking. Norma proceeds to remove some of her clothes, and tell that if she could, she would be naked all the time. Vicente kisses her and compliments her. While they are lying down with Vicente on top of her, she starts to have frantic reaction to the song that was playing because it was the same song that Norma was singing when her mother committed suicide. Vincent tries to stop her scream, but instead she bites her hand. He then puts her clothes back in place. Vincent was nervous and frightened, so he flees from the scene, but Robert sees him leaving. Robert then sends her daughter to the hospital. Robert thought that Vincent assaulted her daughter, so he tracks down Vicente. He hits his bike with his truck and then kidnaps him. He throws his motorbike to the sea, so the police thinks because he was drunk he must have fell from the cliff while driving, so the police closes the case, but his mother was hell-bent to find her son. Scene shift and we see Robert has kept Vincent captive. Over a period of 6 years, Robert physically transforms Vicente to a girl. He adds new skin to his body, and then names his Vera. Now her face was similar to that of his late wife. Robert had forcefully converted Vincent to a girl without his permission. Vincent was not happy with his new identity. He tried many times to escape from Robert, but he failed every time. He also tried committing suicide, but as his skin was too thick he failed. Robert then hires Marisa to look after Vera. At her first encounter with Vera she was shocked to see her face, because it looked same as Robert's late wife. Scene shifts to the present. They both wake up from their sleep. Later Robert and Vera enjoys breakfast together. Vera says, "We will live together now as nothing has ever happened." Fulgencio, one of Robert's colleagues, reads a news story about the missing Vicente and recognizes him as one of their sex change patients. He accuses Robert on experiment on Vincent without his consent. But suddenly Vera arrives there and stands in support of Robert. She tells Fulgencio that this whole process was done with his consent, and that he had allowed Robert to perform the surgery, and also says that she had always liked to be a woman. Scene shifts and we see Robert and Vera sleeping together. But Vera goes to search for lubricant, which was in Robert's office, but she notices his photograph attached to the news story of her being missing. She realizes that her mother has been searching her from so many years, and also how Robert has kept her captive from 6 years. She was filled with anger and rage about what Robert had done to her. She then finds a gun, and rushes straight to Robert's room and shoots him in the chest. Marisa, alerted by the sound of the shot, goes in with her own pistol in hand in Robert's room but finds her son Robert dead. Vera then shoots her too. Marisa in her dying breath say, "I knew it." She then leaves Robert's house and then visits her mother boutique. There she finds Cristina, his ex-colleague. He tells her of his kidnapping, forced sex, change, Robert and murder. Later her mother enters the room. She also reveals her the truth and all the thing that happened to her in the past 6 years. Vincent then reveals her identity in the last line saying, "I am Vicente." And the movie ends. I hope you like the explanation.